mean that we would not have any more religious literacy, which would then mean that we would have no dialogue. This explains it. So if we have religious education, that enables us to have religious literacy, and that in turn then enables dialogue and peace in society. And the forum's bylaws foster peace in society by promoting interfaith dialogue. But this is not only one way, it's a two-way road, so it goes the other way around as well. So this is vital. Religious education, peace in the society. Okay, I have one case study now. Oftentimes it has been asked that how come our community and the Jewish community have been able to integrate themselves so well to the Finnish society. Well, there are several reasons for our integration. We had the minority status already in the country of origin, religious, linguistic, and cultural, whereas the people who came after us, 90% of them in the country of origin, they were living as a majority, and it's different. The myth of return, most of them say that one day I will go back wherever I came from. I've never seen them go back in a box, but other than box, no. So one day I'm going to go back so I don't have to learn the language, I don't have to be interested in the culture, etc., etc., etc. Inexistent social security. My great-grandparents and grandparents had to start working day number one because there was no social security. Whereas today the social security in Finland is making people lazy, to be honest. And number four, I wanted to put this because what I have seen, not only during this symposium, but also I watched the legacy, and I noticed that there was female involvement and co-partnership, and there is still this that I can see. There is female involvement, which is important, because otherwise if you don't have that, then you sort of rule out half of the population, which in other words means that it's something that cannot work. So that's why we have us and the Jewish community, we have been able to integrate. Now the Finnish government started like 8 years ago a process of disintegration with regard to attempts to ban non-medical circumcision, male circumcision, which is mandatory in Judaism and it's sunnah, but practically it's mandatory also in Islam, and religiously motivated slaughter. So we have worked closely with the British Embassy, US Embassy, and German Embassy, as well as the Jewish community and the Muslim community. We have collaborated closely. And finally, we have both of the cases we have won so far, but we'll see what's going to happen. You know, the human rights defenders, most of them in Europe are more or less socialists and Greens. And they are always like, we are for Muslims and we are for minorities. But as the gentleman on my left yesterday here mentioned this word, I learned that they are porcupines, so not telling the truth. But this is, but then again, there's always something good, because without this I would not have been involved with human rights. So. What's next? Okay. Motivation for this, of course, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim hatred, ethnic cleansing, so that meaning that let's make life hard in Finland for Muslims, so the people who came a couple of years ago, they would go back, or there would not be any new Muslims coming in. That's not true, because the treatment Finland is giving or would give at its worst would still be better then the treatment they will get in the country of origin at its best. Then there's sincere ignorance and consciousness stupidity. And then there's this useful idiots. But then I found one, or actually I've used this quote, and I feel this is something we should use here today, because during the opening session, this gentleman was quoted. But it's so true. A lot of sincere ignorance. The people don't understand that religion still matters for us. Even for the secular Muslims. When I was the head of the congregation, I might receive a call from one of the brothers whom I hadn't seen at the mosque for several years. I knew if somebody had died or a baby boy was born. And then I explained, look, circumcision, it's no big deal. You don't visit the mosque, so what? But no, he insisted, because this religious thing had become cultural. And we don't speak anymore about religious slaughter. We speak about religious and cultural restrictions, dietary restrictions. That's it sounds better when the word culture is there, not only religion. Easier to sell. Last recommendation, what should we do? Number one, human rights education and training, because that's what actually we have been doing, not only when promoting the topics I mentioned earlier, but this is actually a slide from my previous presentation, the imaginary presentation. It's a lifelong process. That was, by the way, human rights and youth, and my subtopic was a lifelong process. So young or old, every day you can do, and you can educate yourself, and you can educate other people. Second conclusion, religious education and literacy. So, by the way, I'm going to give you my email, so anybody interested in the slides, I will send them you in PDF. My email is atik, A-T-I-K, @icloud.com. So without religious education, there's no literacy, and that then, as I showed you earlier, affects peace in the society. It definitely will. I don't know when we'll see it. If they ban religious education, how many years we will see the results what will happen. I think it be not that long, maybe a couple of years, and we will see consequences. Thank you. This is my presentation in its whole 16 minutes.
The International Center for Law and Religion Studies is, as you know, broken into different areas of responsibility for the globe. And one of those areas is the United Kingdom. I think we've got it. Thank you. Thanks. And I want to be able to share with you some of the projects that the ICLRS has been doing with the United Kingdom and in the United Kingdom, and how that involves international religious freedom and peacemaking. Let me start, first of all, on the governmental level. There are two APPGs, what are called all-party parliamentary groups. These are cross-party groups, non-governmental as such, but guided by members of parliament. These groups are key convening areas where you can bring together civil society, government, and the academy. The two that this center has been involved in are the APPG, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for International Freedom of Religion or Belief, and the APPG for Genocide Prevention. Both of these areas are seen as critical to what the center wants to be able to do. And we've developed links with both of these areas. one of the important elements of being involved with these groups is that they're nonpartisan. One of the rules to be able to form an all-party parliamentary group is that you've got to have representation from the two major parties, Labour and Conservative, and as many other parties as you can. So, for example, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for International Freedom of Religion or Belief is guided by a Member of Parliament, Jim Shannon, who is with the Democratic Ulster Unionist Party, Northern Ireland. He actually was one of the featured speakers here last year at this conference. So what do we do in these areas? And this is what I wanted to show you. Maybe I'll bring this up. In these areas, here, for example, we support the work of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the institution that has founded, guides, and supports Brigham Young University, including this law school, and we want to do all we can to support the peacemaking efforts of the church. So that's one of our primary functions. And so here you can see a talk that was given by Elder Cook just this past year, so in December of 2023, speaking on at the anniversary for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, using one of the fora that we have there. And so when he gave his message, here you can see some of the people whom I just referenced. Elder Cook is in the center with his wife Mary, and to your left, you'll see Jim Shannon, the tall man with looks like a little lapel badge or something there. And again, the leader of this, the convener, the chair of the International Forum, APPG. I also want to point out, and I would be remiss if I didn't, I want to point out the person who kind of makes this go, because she has done so much for us in this area, and that is somebody who is represented also in this room by extension through Brendan Murphy. He was an intern with this APPG. This APPG accepts interns from Brigham Young University, and you returned, was it over summer?
Last December.
December, okay, so just after this event. Right, and that's Julie, and she is?
Second from the left.
Second from the left, thank you. Thank you very much. She kind of is in the background making this all work and organizing, etc. So that's one of our key functions, and it would be very important for us to be able to continue to do this, again, in a nonpartisan way. And when I say that, I really mean it. It's the same Elder Quentin Cook of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles that's pictured here in the center, spoke at a global ministerial in 2022, and he was flanked by Fleur Anderson of the Labour Party and Baroness Helena Kennedy, also of the Labour Party. She's in the House of Lords. So it's very important to the church that it is nonpartisan and that we work with all parties striving to create peace. Because it's relevant to an event happening here at Brigham Young University, I'll mention this. This happened a few years previously, and it's Elder Holland, who spoke at the University of Oxford to theologians and religious leaders, and became a great friend to the Reverend Andrew Teal. And a magnificent event was sponsored at Pembroke College, Oxford, in which Elder Holland spoke with the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, and Lord David Alton, and Francis Jeffries of the Methodist community. Francis Young, excuse me. And Reverend Teal is actually speaking tomorrow evening, Wednesday evening, here at Brigham Young University in the Wheatley Institution, so the Hinckley building on campus. And we're delighted that he's able to speak. So again, ICLRS supported this event. This was not a governmental event. This was a multi-faith event, different faiths represented. The proceedings of this were then turned into a book called Inspiring Service. The aim of this was to help us all see how our beliefs should inspire service, how this moves from head to heart to hand, how service is one of the ends of working together with multiple faiths. Now, there are some other ways that ICLRS continues to support the United Kingdom in peacemaking and religious freedom. We work with the Amar Foundation, an international charitable foundation founded and guided by Baroness Emma Nicholson of Winterbourne. And these projects that she has initiated and her charitable foundation are ones that the International Center for Law and Religion Studies continue to support. Most recently, we support what's known as the Windsor Dialogue. It's a group of academics, scholars, practitioners, government leaders coming together to focus on a specific area of humanitarian need. Baroness Nicholson has been a tremendous supporter of the Yazidi people. You'll know these people. They were one of the groups that were overrun during the time of ISIS and have largely lived out an existence in exile in Germany, who has been tremendous in giving support to Yazidis, as well as other nation states. Many Yazidis are in refugee camps. Many have experienced incredible trauma, and the center has supported Baroness Nicholson efforts to stem this trauma and to find ways to give literally the Yazidi people a voice. One of the ways that Baroness Nicholson has done this is through helping the Yazidi people preserve their cultural heritage, which the Islamic State attempted to destroy. And what she's achieved here is truly significant. She and a leading musician, professor of music, collected and notated the Yazidi music and then has this music stored at the Bodleian Library, Oxford, so that it will always be preserved and it won't be lost. She also works with women, and we've supported this effort, choirs, because it's found that music helps people to heal. So a group of Yazidi women has performed in various areas. Last year they performed with the BBC, as well as in Oxford at the Bodleian Library, where their music is stored and preserved for public performances. This helps the women who've been traumatized by ISIS, and it helps to expand their culture and to share their culture with others. One of the key areas of our work in the United Kingdom is actually guided by Amy Andrus, who is chairing our session. And this work is done with a group of young scholars. I'll just pull this up.
And we need to also give due recognition to Holly Leeson, who is also in the room,
Yes.
who co-administers this program.
And I will always forever say her name is Holly Lazan. But Amy and Holly guide this program, and this program is really remarkable, and I've got to give credit to our director. Some years ago, he sat down with me. It was not quite the meeting that C.S. Lewis and Joy had at the Randolph Hotel in Oxford, but Professor Sharps and I met in the same hotel, and he said, I have this thought of what could be done to kind of expand international religious freedom in a very practical way that would bless the lives of people, young scholars throughout the world. And I was very interested, what is this? What do you have in mind? And what he had in mind has now become this 3-week training course for international faculty, graduate students, and government officials. They gather at Christ Church, Oxford, pictured here, as you can see, and they learn what you see here, and I won't go through what's given. But the real essence of it, at least to me, is taking younger scholars or government officials who haven't had much training in international religious freedom formally, guiding them through a casebook that Professor Sharps and Professor Cole Durham, the founding director of this institute 31 years ago, created. They literally have written the book on international religious freedom. This is the key legal casebook for international religious freedom. These young scholars not necessarily members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In fact, many are not. Gather together. They have an application process. They gather together to learn how to understand international religious freedom, how to think like international lawyers, how to understand the key cases that have been there, and then they return to their home countries with this knowledge. There's also a very practical component. As many of you know, I'm sure Major Ali knows this. Did I get your rank correct? Yes. Thank you. So just as he knows as a lawyer, there's a certain way of thinking as a lawyer, a certain way of writing. So one of the key components that's incredibly practical and useful, and I speak this as a scholar, is to help them to learn to write a legal article in English. Many times this is transformative of a young scholar's life in their own country. If they're able to produce a legal article and get it published in a well-known journal, this strengthens them, their position, and helps them to advance in their own careers. In fact, I was told by our esteemed Holly, is it correct that at this conference we've done this for 4 years and that there is a representative of each year from the graduating class? 5 years?
Represented from each. Purely coincidence. We did not set out in choosing delegates to pick someone from each session, but these are scholars that are doing important work, and they're here presenting on that, and it so happens that we have a representative from each year.
From each of those years, already presenting their own research, which is
Argentina, Ukraine, United States, Ethiopia, Holly, help me out.
Korea.
and Korea.
Yeah.
Just tremendous. And again, I give credit, truly, it was an inspiring vision. It takes a lot to have something like this happen. It takes funding efforts. I'm grateful to the donors who've made this work. It takes a tremendous amount of organization to house and to make sure that people come together for an organized course of study of this kind. Whilst they're there, they are also exposed to the UK government's areas of international religious freedom. They'll often visit the Supreme Court there, visit Parliament, go on other kinds of informative tours and excursions, as well as participate in a series of conferences that are often held in conjunction with the events of this 3-week training program. And this just gives you 2023's set of conferences, so you can see something of the variety of what the center sponsors in addition to those 3 weeks. So here you can see polarized constitutionalism, foundations and founding figures of human dignity, civilizational perspectives on human dignity, as well as the convening of the International Sermon Studies Association Conference, Sermons and Human Dignity. Some of these conferences are sponsored by ICLRS, but as you see with the International Sermon Studies, that is an external group which combined with ICLRS to hold their annual conference at Christ Church. And so these are the kinds of activities that the young scholars are able to participate in, and of course, many others. If I tap on the International Sermon Studies, you'll see the kinds of speakers that attend. Here you can see Professor Paul Martins from Baylor University, the Reverend Dr. Ambassador Suzanne Johnson-Cook, Professor Sandler, University of Innsbruck, Dr. Michael Ward, University of Oxford, all participating in this International Sermon Studies Association conference sponsored by the center. Finally, and I want to be sensitive to our time, we also work in conjunction with the Wolf Institute, Cambridge. This institute, which you would have seen represented in person with the executive director, Miriam Wagner, Dr. Wagner, had she been able to be here, you would have learned that this is one of the leading centers of interfaith study in the world. Christian, Muslim, Jewish relations are taught here. The center supports their work, and the institute, this Wolf Institute, has been very supportive of the center. Each year, we send a group of around 20 undergraduates to study Christian, Jewish, Muslim relations. They visit synagogues, they visit mosques, they visit Christian places of worship. They learn from the fellows of the Institute as well as Cambridge, understanding key topics in this area of study. Often then, these students will then come over to Oxford while this other program is running and maybe participate in one of those conferences, which has happened, for example, this past year. Last year, 2023, they came over and participated in the International Sermon Studies Association conference. This year, they participated in the Abrahamic Faiths Workshop. I don't want to say too much about that because you'll hear Ambassador Saperstein and his group talking about that, I believe, in today's later session. And so that's a kind of reprise of what they presented at Oxford in the summer. All of these things taken together, and I should note that Dr. Emma Harris of that institute is here. She's going to be speaking to our students through the Kennedy Center tomorrow, and then introducing students to this program. All of this happens because of the support of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies. You can see how multifaceted it is. It can get down to individual granular levels of training, and it can be as broad as hosting a conference not associated with the center. It works with the UK government, and it works to support the aims of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I should also say, just as we acknowledged Holly here, I want to acknowledge the presence of Malcolm Adcock, a lawyer who is the church's, make sure I have this correct, because I know that there's been a change.
I studied law, but went to the dark side.
Not the dark side. But he has been at almost all of these events and continues to support from the United Kingdom side in public communications what it is that we do. And so I'm grateful for his presence and for what he has done over many, many years in this space. Now with that, I'll conclude by simply saying this, if you'd like to learn more of what ICLRS supports, please just have a look at the recent talk of one of our guiding leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He delivered this talk just at the weekend in our general conference. This is President Dallin H. Oakes, somebody who has been to the United Kingdom, worked with ICLRS to support the aims of international religious freedom. He's spoken to the all-party parliamentary group on international religious freedom in the UK Parliament and has been a tremendous support of the university. He was himself a president of Brigham Young University and continues to support the university, the law school, and the center, and we're very, very grateful for his remarks at General Conference, and I recommend them to you if you want to understand what is peacemaking to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thank you.
Thank you, Atik and Paul, so much for those well-organized, thoughtful remarks. And again, thank you for stepping up and being very flexible in stepping in and stepping up. We have almost, this is a world record, folks. We have 17 minutes, I think, for questions and answers. This clock is actually 3 minutes fast. So according to my watch, we do have 17 minutes. And maybe I'll just begin if I can. Again, moderator's privilege here, but Atik, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about religious education in Finland. I know in the United States, it is not against the law nor against the Constitution to teach religion as a subject in primary schools or secondary schools as an academic subject. Say, for example, the history of religion, and yet I think schools are often so fearful of violating the Establishment Clause of our Constitution that we don't often see religious education within the schools themselves. So I'd like to just learn a little bit about the nature of religious education in Finland in primary and secondary schools, and what the nature of the threat is. You've talked about it being a little bit under threat, and what the nature of that threat might be.
Yes, thank you. First of all, it's we have two kinds of. First of all, it's not confessional. Okay, most of the, as I've shown you the statistics, evangelical Lutheran, they are the majority. But then again, they don't have the right to choose. They have to attend these religion classes, whereas all the others can choose between that and between ethics. If there's a minimum of 3 pupils of certain faith, the government has to arrange like tuition in his or her religion, which works in theory well, but in practice to find so many teachers in Islam, it's a bit, it's challenging, especially some of the parents don't accept should the teacher not be a Muslim. So it's the secular anti-religion sentiment and secularism, they are the ones in charge of sort of banning education of religion in primary and secondary schools. What my congregation does, we have our own education plan, so our members' children will once a week go to the imam's lessons, and they will get a grade, and that grade will be accepted by the government. So they don't have to do this. But otherwise, it's about this, that if there is no religious literacy, there cannot be any dialogue, and if no dialogue, it will affect peace in the society. That's the problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing is that suppose we let only the mosques teach religion, then that's a problem also, because a lot of conservative ideas which were not when Islam was founded there. So
There's the concern of the take on religion that is the point of view of the religion that is taught in the schools.
yes.
Okay. Does anyone have a follow-up question or another question for our panelists? Yeah, Paul.
Thank you so much. I was struck in your talk when you showed the relative sizes of different religious groups that, and as you described historically, it, of course, rang a bell with me as a historian, how early on Muslims had been integrated and accepted, at least on the constitutional level, and the Jewish community as well. You noted, though, I think when it came to the 5,000 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that it's been a little bit hard to get to the table. You've helped us with that. Thank you. What more could we do to show goodwill, good faith, good neighborliness, desire to help? How might we be able to address any concerns that might be there in Finland?
Right. There is a law, actually. They are passing a law concerning FGM, female genital mutilation, which has nothing to do with non-medical circumcision. But then again, there are parties which feel that legislation should be neutral, so that FGM and circumcision would be the same and should be banned. Should this be the case, then we need support, and now I know that I can get support from you and from BYU, obviously, hopefully. That in turn would then, I think, have a positive impact within the Muslim community and the Jewish community, that we are on the same, we're in the same boat, sort of. We believe in different things, but we are like in the same boat, and we are spiritual people, and we help you help us, and then we will help you. One example, we had a seminar it was like a human dignity, subtitle LGBTIQA+ rights. That was in May, and we have a follow-up seminar now in November. The first seminar, the Minister for Education attended, because religious matters are under the Ministry of Education and Culture. So we had a panel, we had presentations, and then we had a panel, and the head of it's like the Sexual Minorities Association. There are several, but this is the major one. The General Secretary publicly announced that should there be any problems with your religion or your belief, we will be there to support you. This is something nobody would have thought could have happened like 5 years ago. This took place at the headquarters of the of the Evangelical Lutheran Church. And the next one is going to be in our Islam building, which is the main building for Islam in Finland. So to demonstrate that we are talking serious business here. This is the way you can have Muslims and Jews and other faiths to build the trust and see that we are working together. You help us and we'll help you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, another question for Mr. Ali. I'm interested. Oh, yeah.
And you can use Finnish if you want. He can speak Finnish.
Bad boy. I'm interested to know if your organization or others have noticed regional differences in religiously motivated crimes or employment rates of Muslims or other religious minorities and attendance at mosque, particularly between southern Finland, particularly Helsinki and Turku and Tampere, and more rural areas in the north and east.
Good question, yes. There are no statistics about it, but I would assume that if we go to Oulu, and Rovaniemi, which are like in Lapland, I would say, and if you look at statistics concerning Friday prayers, I would say there are no differences between, geographical differences there aren't. I don't think so. But yeah. Most of them are like, they are getting their funding from somewhere else. As a result of this, for example, Saudi Arabia isn't giving any money anymore to anybody because they cannot control, and if something goes wrong and they find out the funding came from Saudi Arabia, then it's the Saudis to blame. So that's why they are really, really cautious now for these reasons. But the problem with that is that there is no female presence. Yeah, I would say. No, it's not that bad as it is in the UK, where there are several mosques women cannot enter, even outside the praying times, which is something we fortunately don't have in Finland. But just imagine, we had Friday prayer, and Nuri Turkel was visiting our congregation, and we had...
Who was a Uyghur activist, for those
Yes.
who don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so the women were sitting separately and the men separately, and I had my briefcase and I covered him like this. Now imagine that part where the women were sitting would be absent, and then I took it away, and he felt the difference. And if you imagine that there were no female today here. Or the problem in Finland with when it comes to human rights activists, especially when it comes to gender equality, I'm always as a minority gender-wise. It's 90% female, 10% at 10% tops. There was this one parliamentary seminar about gender equality, and I told them that, look, I'm the only male except that guy. And that guy turned out to be the photographer. So that's something we have to do. I've told them that if you want Finland or any other country to be gender equal, then you have to take men and you have to get men involved as well. Otherwise, it will never work out.
Thank you. Other questions behind me?
Ralf Grünke from the Communication Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In Frankfurt, I've been contributing to facilitating interfaith dialogue in Central Europe for many years, and I'm just interested in your experience. Mr. Ali, you described what sounded like a good working relationship between Muslims and Jews. In Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, other countries, we've noticed that since October 7th of last year, that dialogue has either been put on hold or meetings, events have been cancelled. Sometimes Jewish, sometimes Muslim groups have refused to participate in interfaith events. Have you seen anything of that nature in Finland as well? And if I may add another question, also since October 7th of last year, in many countries we've seen a sudden surge of anti-Semitic hate crimes and anti-Muslim hate crimes. Anti-Semitic hate crimes in Germany have doubled from 2024 since 2023 already, and they doubled from 2023 to 2022. Anti-Muslim hate crimes have risen by 30% in the state where I live. Be interested to see what the situation is like in Finland. Thank you.
Yes, I've noticed the same. We had Ramadan last spring, and we used to have interfaith iftars, the fast breaking, and no, nothing. I told them now is the time to do this. It's not during the good times, it's during the bad times we have to do this. I, though, attended, we were like, I think, there was 10 of us, the ambassador of Israel, she arranged one iftar, but otherwise, no. And the US Embassy, of course, then had the iftar, but otherwise, yes. The same is going on in Finland as well. And the worst part actually is that I've always thought that anti-Semitism is something that the target can only be of Jewish faith, but I was also attacked in Twitter for collaborating and doing things together with the Jewish head of the Jewish congregations. So and then there's anti-Semitism. I still believe in the canary bird theory that if there's anti-Semitism, after that there will be other things. For example, anti-Muslim hatred, and this is exactly what has happened. We have new kind of anti-Semitism. That's the Muslims, and then we have this what I call the vintage anti-Semitism. Obviously, most of them then are Christians targeting Muslims, but anti-Semitism is living its renaissance, unfortunately, not only in Finland but all of Europe.
And on that discouraging note, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. I do have a question for Paul. Paul, I know with the dissolution of the government and at the beginning of a new government in the UK, that the APPGs are dissolved as well, correct? Do you know what the status is on APPG for FORB and genocide prevention? What the status is on the reconvening of those, if they will be reconvened?
So obviously with a new government, new people come into power. Flor Anderson, for example, who had spoken alongside Elder Cook, she's now been raised to ministerial level. So usually somebody who's a minister won't then guide an all-party parliamentary group. They have too many demands on their time. Their portfolio can only hold so much. So the APPG for genocide prevention is figuring out who's going to be the person that might represent labor in that category. Now you can have many other members, but you need a chair, somebody who will actually guide and steer this and represent it, along then maybe with a conservative colleague or a colleague from another party. So that one is a bit up in the air. I met with the secretary, the person who runs the secretariat portion of that. As far as the FORB one, they've been very, very stable, and that chairman retained his seat, and so that can carry on. I should also add there are very strict laws surrounding how these operate to make sure that the funding is done properly, etc. So APPG genocide prevention is reconstituting its leadership, and the FORB one I think is continuing to go strong. The members may change if people have lost their seats, but he hasn't lost his. He's retained his.
And has there been a special envoy appointed yet?
That was introduced a few years ago, and I don't know that they're sure yet. Maybe, I don't know if you have any more information. I don't think they're sure yet whether they want to replace that as a position. Within the United Kingdom, certain committees and positions are standard and carry on. Certain ones, though, are limited. And so if it's a limited committee, for example, it will function for a while, submit its report, and then it dissolves. That particular position was a prime minister's appointment and creation. I know there was some effort to retain it, but whether the new government is seeking to do that at this moment, I don't think we're sure about it.
And this was a special envoy for international freedom of religion or belief. That position was held by Fiona Bruce, who lost her seat in the last election. She was also the chair of, I'm sorry, I'm having elderly moment here with my memory. Chair of, yes, IRFPA, thank you. I could only think of USERF, and it's not USERF. IRFPA, thank you, Malcolm. Malcolm or Jared, do you have anything more to add to that information? Okay.
Yeah, I know the Labour government has committed to bringing forward a new envoy for religious freedom, but we're now 4 months post-election, and that envoy is yet to make an appearance, although there were some rumours quite early on that someone had been appointed. Whether or not that selected person has perhaps turned down the position, who knows? But I think it's clear that 4 months in, it's possibly not near the priority list of appointments for the government at this time.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
And maybe I could ask our honourable member to say a word about the Scottish Parliament and how that's organised and what they offer for FORB, because they too have a group.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the Scottish Parliament, which is relatively in its infancy compared to the Grand Parliament of Westminster, has a parliamentary committee system very similar to that found in Westminster, where there's a cross-party parliamentary group of MSPs, we call them, dedicated to freedom of religion and belief. I think actually, a word on the Scottish Parliament, there is a little bit more difficulty there in getting that off the ground and getting them well mobilised. I know there is a genuine will, goodwill within the Parliament to make good efforts internationally on behalf of Scotland to further this work and to work collaboratively with the APPG in Westminster.
Thank you. Would you please join me in thanking Atik Ali and Paul Kerry for sharing their wisdom and